And thank you everyone for being here today and your interest. So yes, I think I'll start with maybe the unique position that I hold as Arizona Literacy Director. It is a shared position, the way we like to describe it, between our founding partners of Read on Arizona, and that is the Arizona Department of Education, the Head Start State Collaboration Office, First Things First, and Piper Charitable Trust, Helios Education Foundation, and Arizona Community Foundation. And the idea behind creating the position and the agreement and the alignment was that there was really a need to have someone sort of coordinating along the continuum around early literacy services. And so wouldn't it be interesting to kind of have an air traffic controller, if you will, who helps all the partners with coordinating and aligning their literacy services, and especially these two key partners here that I've asked to join me today because they represent the full continuum of ages 0 to 8. So I really do feel very lucky to have 6 organizations, the founding partners, supporting the work that I do, along with all the other partners that we work with. And there are so many, as you'll see in my presentation when we get to that part. There is a broad sector of other partners that are involved in this initiative. So with that, did you want to say anything else before I dive in, and then I'll hand it over when it's okay. Pardon me, it's my neck. There we go. So I thought I would just do a very quick, and this has actually been helpful in aligning a lot of getting all our partners together on what do we, why is literacy important, and why now, and why 3rd grade reading. But it really is, a lot of you have seen all the forward momentum around Common Core, and early literacy is critical to all of the success that a student in the 21st century needs and the skills that they need. So critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity, and a high demand for reading and writing proficiencies are basically a non-negotiable these days. They're absolutely required of students. Reading is the major foundational skill for school readiness. Hi, Brian. And reading ability is strongly related to academic success, so there's a strong correlation. And we also know that early reading and 3rd grade reading as a benchmark in particular are strong predictors of 9th grade course performance, high school graduation, and college attendance. So it's sort of, start as you mean to go on. But we also understand that it starts way before a student enters kindergarten, and so those building blocks of early language abilities are precursors to early reading success. I'm sure a number of you are very familiar with the 30 million word gap and other evidence and research that has shown how important language ability and vocabulary are to reading success later on. We thought we'd just show some of the language skills and how early they start, so that we could give you a sense of, we can actually now start to understand if a child is developmentally delayed in language at even as early as 18 months, that has a significant impact on their ability to become a strong reader. So we need to start as early as possible. And that language matters, and it's not just the quality, but it's the amount of language a child hears and the ability to have those exchanges and conversations and the verbal stimulation. So this is an important building block in the journey to become an early reader. And we just wanted to identify a few early literacy gaps. There's a disparity in language development, of course, emerging in infancy and widening into toddlerhood. So see how early that starts. Low-income children entering kindergarten are typically 12 to 14 months behind, and that's according to national norms. And nearly 40% of incoming kindergartners nationwide enter school without the basic language skills that they need to learn to read. So we have some significant challenges ahead of us. And then just one sort of call out here is that we have some baselines on where we know we're at as far as the state goes in 3rd grade reading proficiency. And we particularly know that a lot of our low-income children, almost 85% of them are reading below proficiency. So therefore fairly easy to sum up that we have what we're calling a crisis on our hands. This is not something that's going to, eventually disappear without some significant shifts in how we approach it and how we tackle this problem. So that's what we're here to talk to you about today, which is what we've developed in what we're calling the initiative of the work that we're building and this alignment that we're building with all the partners that I've already referenced and more, is around, I sort of like to say, we're building a literacy tent and everybody needs to see themselves in that tent and the work that they're doing, whether they're an early child care practitioner, preschool educator, a K3 instructor, community partner, that they should see that they're within that Read On Arizona tent, and that we're trying to all build, what we're trying to do is build a continuum of effective literacy supports and practices so a child has a pathway to a seamless transition to becoming a reader, that they have supports and services at every touch point that they need to be able to help them develop their potential as an emerging reader. We list the mission statement, and it is a broad public-private sector partnership, and again, we're all committed to those outcomes for Arizona's children ages birth to age 8. As I referenced, I listed already and recognized the founding partners, but we also have, for those Read On communities that were listed, core partners that are helping us facilitate early literacy action plans within local communities. So a number of them are driven either by local community partners like our United Ways, Valley of the Sun United Way, United Way of Yuma, United Way of Flagstaff, and United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona, but also some of our local officials and their either their city council or the mayor's office have also stepped up to play a facilitating role. So you'll see the City of Goodyear, City of Mesa, and City of Phoenix listed there too. And what that means is they're playing a convening role, a facilitating role to bring partners together, develop an early literacy action plan, and start to identify the gaps in their communities as far as literacy goes, and then plans to help fill those gaps. Here is just a snapshot, not expecting you to be able to read every line on this, but of the collaborative partners and the scope of the collaboration that we've built so far. And these are the statewide or involved in the Read On Arizona. And then each of those Read On communities have a list of their own local partners that they've engaged. And just to give you sort of an idea of the common vision that we've developed, it's around 3 key goals. One is to increase the number of kids, the percentage of kids reading at or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. Increase the percentage of kids demonstrating school readiness at kindergarten, and specifically we call out in language and literacy domain. And then to drive change through capacity building, group solutions, continuous instructional improvement, and integrated systems. So that every child enters kindergarten ready for school success and stays on track for college or life success, career success. So what we had to do to kind of get everybody behind these 3 broad, very big goals was develop what we call the vision of what the early literacy system should look like. And for us, that entails 4 key components you'll see here. And it really is a very simple mantra that it's complicated to deliver, which is a system that delivers the right program at the right time for every child. And that means a system that has language-rich and engaging curriculum that's coordinated for impact, and that means quality as well as the right dosage. If you have a quality tutoring program, but it only serves the child a half an hour a week and it needs to serve the child 45 minutes a week, then that's not going to get you where you need to go. Ongoing assessments and screenings as early as possible, capacity building models for professional development, and family supports focused on language and literacy. And what we mean there is really giving families not just the awareness that early literacy and language development is important, but tools so that they actually can help play a key and significant part in that routine. So sometimes it means changing what the family routine looks like and how they incorporate reading or talking or language development in their family routines, all with the outcome of 3rd grade reading proficiency. But essentially, I think that the key part of what is unique or what is important about Read On Arizona is that independently, all of these organizations that are involved make good progress and are working hard towards helping do their part in early literacy. The unique proposition is the alignment and building the framework and then really giving a lift to the momentum around early literacy. That's what Read On Arizona brings to the equation, and why we, I think, have gotten the success we have as far as alignment and partnerships, that they understand each of them can make progress, but together we can really sort of, I guess, that famous Steve Jobs quote, make a dent in the universe, and I think that's what we're trying to do, is make a dent in early literacy.
Terri, do you mind being interrupted with?
Not at all, please.
Do you mind if during, or you want me to wait?
No.
Do you mind going back to that slide? And I don't want to belabor this, but in your view, what's the difference between alignment and collaboration? Because you can do the framework for who's doing what, but is there any carrot or stick you have to really drive collaboration, which is somewhat different than alignment?
Right. It's what we call that, and I was just actually at a national meeting with the Annie E. Casey Foundation on Friday talking about this. It's influence without authority. And that is a very tricky balancing act, but really that is what you're trying to do, but bringing best practices, bringing technical assistance, bringing an understanding of how you might help strengthen what direction a partner or a collaboration is going, is that influence with and without authority.
So you have to make them want to play with you.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, absolutely. And we did a very preliminary gap analysis, and I just kind of want to go quickly through this. But what we found in our talking with a number of our partners and doing a survey with over hundreds of early literacy providers was that the system is fragmented, that effective practices are disconnected from the standards. Outcomes are measured differently across program type. There's a lot of data collection, but little data sharing. And the needs of those groups that would benefit most from effective literacy services are not being met. And then the biggest surprise, not at all, was that provider capacity is stretched. So I think, again, that's that unique proposition that Read On Arizona, because we have worked towards trying to address some of these gaps. And how we did that is in sort of identifying 4 challenges and then 4 key solutions that Read On Arizona specifically was going to try to address. The first one is that lack of information on critical factors prevents solutions. So, and the way we are looking at addressing that is we have put together a data integration and systems linkages working group, and they are helping us identify how to better improve the process with which data is shared, how it's accessed, so that our providers can start really working from a results-based accountability method and almost a data-driven decision-making, having a strong commitment to data-driven decision-making. But some of our partners don't have the access or the strong systems that some of our larger agencies do, so we wanted to create some sort of process. So we're actually embarking on a pilot program through the Campaign for Grade Level Reading around this. So we'll have more information to share as that gets underway. A lack of communication and coordination between efforts, and this goes to, again, just being aware of all the different services that are going on and what each of them, the unique strengths that each of them has, and making sure that the others are aware of who they can partner with and how they might be even stronger if they partnered or collaborated with some of these other entities. So creating a read-on network of communities that really are focused on that broad endeavor of community collaboration. And we started initially when we embarked on this with 4 communities, and we are now up to 8. And we have a number of communities that are applying to become additional read-on communities. So we may be at almost 12 by the end of the year if all goes well. And it's quite a process to become a read-on community, so it's not something like you just sort of, yes, I'd like to be one, and then you are one. You have to pull your partners together. You have to identify your key stakeholders in your community, who's going to be the lead. You have to develop an action plan to identify what your priorities are going to be. So there's a bit of work to be had around that.
When you say community, does it mean like city, or is it something different than that?
Great question. We purposely leave it undefined. So if a school district wants to define itself as a community, or a city wants to define, or a town, and I think we will have one county that is going to become to apply to become. So they have put together quite a strong collaboration, actually engaged conversations and meetings with about 9 local, small towns within their county, and are doing it collaboratively. So we try not to define it and let them define what they feel is a community. As long as they follow the same process and have engaged all of the right stakeholders, then I think that's okay. Insufficient access to programs that work. This is where I will admit, I'll say this sometimes, this is where I'm going to geek out on everybody. This is a wonderful task force, and some of you, Kathy is actually participates on this task force, made up of literacy specialists and reading instructors. And what we realized when we did this preliminary gap analysis is that we have standards around literacy, but we don't always have a great understanding from our practitioners of how you implement those standards effectively. And so what we wanted to do with this task force is ask them to help us create a tool that would help outline and be something that practitioners could use and other partners could use to sort of say, this is what it looks like when you do strong instructional literacy strategies, or this is effective reading and assessment around for a 3-year-old. And so it's been a wonderful sort of group coming together over the last 3 or 4 months and really articulating what is, and building on the strong state literacy plan and the strong standards that we already have, but helping to kind of basically carve out what the sandbox looks like for us and where we're trying to go. Would that be a good summation, Kathy?
I love it, especially the sandbox reference.
Because there's many directions and many different, and I was having this conversation with someone at the Casey Foundation, and is a lot of times you get so caught up in the momentum and you're working towards high action, but I sort of said to, what we want is high effective action. And so we need to basically outline what that, what those key components are in all of our, in our early literacy models, so that we can help practitioners, providers, partners move in that direction and not maybe kind of go off too far afield. So that's that one. And then the last 2 little, awareness and attention giving to early literacy. And that is where all of our partners are playing a key role in community awareness engagement, and especially our read-on communities at the local level. And we're just beginning the process of a 3-year communications plan around this as well. So, but we have had some great input and thoughts around the key sort of strategies and what that looks like from our partners. So I'm excited to say, again, more to come, but there's been already good momentum and good awareness built around that. This was just, again, a little snapshot to show you what we're talking about when I talked about that data integration and systems linkages. This is a sample of a results scorecard so that we would identify literacy indicators and benchmarks and be able to actually track over each year our progress, hopefully our progress. This is just an example of how we have been marketing out and making communities aware that they can become a read-on community, and that seems to really your community here, and being part of that network within the state and building a community of practice has been something that's really resonated for our partners in our communities. For instance, if Flagstaff has a strong kindergarten transition program that focuses on early literacy, and NUMA has identified that as a gap, they can quickly share best practices and how sort of it was built and sort of shortcut the process. So building that literacy community of practice is an important key piece of this. And then just to highlight some of the things that we've been able to do around communications and community involvement. you know, we've developed a logo and a brand so that everyone feels that they're under that same tent. We have partners that are helping us communicate out our messages. We have some national things that we've been communicating, like school writing, school attendance awareness month is the month of September, so we're asking all of our partners to share that information out. And then in November, we'll be doing a partnership with McDonald's around Family Reading Day, and Kathy's going to talk a little bit about the wonderful early literacy guide that we're going to be distributing through that. And then just, again, to highlight some of the things we've been able to accomplish in the first year, a 10-year strategic literacy action plan, ongoing introduction of national best practices, so we've been having national organizations come and share what they do and how they do it, building a community of practice like I talked about. We've been getting national recognition around the statewide model. We've been assisting with Move On When Reading, and then in May we launched a statewide summer reading collaborative, which was the first time all of our partners devoted their efforts towards in pushing the summer reading program through the library system. And we have preliminary numbers on our participation. Our goal was 100,000, and just in Maricopa County alone, we had 125,000 participants and a million books read. So we're happy with that, and we want to build on that for next summer. And with the launch of that summer reading collaborative, we launched the website for Read On Arizona, so that's just a snapshot to give you a sort of look and feel of what kind of resources between Find a Book, Find a Library, and other practical tools and things for parents or educators or librarians. All of those things can be found. Those resources are found on our website. So now I'm going to hand it over to my very key and critical partners, and I think we'll start with Aaliyah and have her start with the beginning part of the continuum, and then Kathy will finish up with the key part of the K3.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, before I go too deep into the nuts and bolts of how we're connected with Read On, I'd like to give you a little background about First Things First. First Things First was established in 2006 through a voter initiative, and 80 cents of every dollar spent on tobacco products funds our agency. And the bylaws of our agency really tie us to birth through 5. So we have about 31 regional councils across the entire state, and the focus of First Things First programming is to really allow local control. So every 2 years, a community, one of the 31 communities, completes what's called the Needs and Assets Report. And that report basically outlines the needs of that particular community, including our tribes. We have 19 of the 22 registered tribes that also are part of First Things First. And they utilize that needs assessment to really guide where the funds should go. First Things First has 3 large programmatic goal areas. We have health, we have early learning, and then we have family support and literacy. So those 31 regional councils, which are comprised of community leaders, determine what their priorities may be. They could have needs around early learning and our Quality First program. And through our Quality First program, we have at this point over 900 child care providers within the Quality First program. And that's ensuring that children are being afforded high quality early childhood environments. It could also be a health concern in their area. If they're one of the ones that really rise to the top is around oral health, because a lot of communities have realized that high absenteeism in kindergarten is directly related to oral health. So they're approaching oral health as a topic. Also, for example, under family support and literacy, home visitation and our family resource centers are really key guides within communities to provide support to the families. So with all that, that's just kind of the big picture of First Things First. And how we align with Terri is Terri and Read On and the Read On initiative has really helped to bring a heightened awareness around the importance of early literacy. And First Things First understands that we are a small portion of the system, and what we do in those first 5 years is critical to a child's success that then feed into kindergarten. So with Terri's work on creating an alignment between birth, really prenatal to age 8, we have really worked very closely with Terri to make sure that we are heading in the right direction. And we're taking several different approaches with that, but also when decisions are made around early literacy, we make sure that we're in good consultation to make sure that we're aligned so that when children and their families enter the school system, they truly have a strong foundation to be able to perform well. So we are working on a continuum of effective literacy practices, and really the goal of this document is to move away from particular programs or programming and really on what are best practices. And First Things First has decided to utilize the continuum in several different capacities. In family support and literacy in particular, we have about $38 million of funding that go out across the entire state. And with that comes a certain charge that we have to really bring an awareness. So we're utilizing our standard of practice, which is the guiding tool for each of our grant contracts, to make sure that our practitioners are aware of how they can effectively bring an awareness or implement early literacy practices within their grant. So the continuum is going to inform our standards of practice, which will then be part of a contractual obligation for our grantees. And the great thing about the continuum is that it really aligns very well and will provide those practitioners hands-on resources on how they can effectively help increase literacy in their settings. The intent is to, another layer of the continuum is to utilize it to guide an early literacy standard of practice, which will be a standalone guiding tool for all of our grant contracts that go out across our 3 goal areas. So whether it's early learning, health, or family support, there's a consistent message on what best practices in early literacy are. And so really creating a network and increasing the standard and the bar on what our expectations are around early literacy. The continuum and also the work with Terri. Terri sits on our Family Support and Literacy Advisory Committee, and we actually had a meeting this morning. And that advisory committee is really looking at the intentionality of what we're doing around early literacy. The first few years of First Things First was really with any new agency, how do we get the funds out the door and into the community? And so now that we have had a few years of programming under our belt, we're taking a step back to look at how can we do a better job of not only linking our services, but providing that consistent message around early literacy and using all of the different capacities that we have just under family support alone. So for example, we have home visitors, and home visiting is one of our highest funded strategies. We have over $20 million going in across the state into home visiting. And these are practitioners who are actually in the home working with parents during this very critical developmental period. So how do we leverage that resource of having home visitors in the home to help parents understand what their role is as their child's primary and first teacher? In addition, we have parent educators, we have family resource center staff, all working hands-on with our parents. And how do we help them inform parents and really change the perspective of infants and young children being these cute little things that just eat a lot and make a mess, but really help them understand all of the learning that's happening and utilizing the neuroscience and all of the research that's coming out and really translating that in a tangible, realistic way where our practitioners, who could be of varying educational abilities, have a resource to understand how they can assist. One of our guiding tools, as well as with the neuroscience, is really helping people understand that 90% of a child's brain is developed by the time they enter kindergarten. So how do we use those first few critical years and really making sure that all of those neurons and connections are made so that once they hit kindergarten, they're ready to hit the door, and also avoiding some of the language gaps. So also we have made sure that we really are linking ourselves to other agencies. For example, we work very closely with Department of Health Services and Department of Economic Security to ensure that they are as well aligned with us as far as this early literacy movement, and making sure that their practitioners as well are informed and have resources in order to provide a strong early literacy environment within their settings. An example of that is this: at the end of September, through federal dollars for a home visiting grant, we have over 600 home visitors across the state coming for this professional development opportunity. And at the core of this professional development opportunity is really talking about how our home visitors can help inform and educate parents around, not just parents, but whoever's in that home, around early literacy and really maximizing that period of development and growth. So there's been a lot of discussion about coordination, collaboration, and first things first is fortunate that in the role as a primary funder in early childhood programs, we can make it part of our standard of practice to then make it a requirement as we go into the implementation period. So being very intentional on the wording of our grant applications, our government-to-government agreements, our interstate agreements, to make sure that that language is consistent and it aligns. Most importantly, we want to make sure that we're doing our job of making sure that children are in fact ready for school and that parents understand what that role is. I think those are the big hitters. We again have been very, very intentional in understanding that it's not just our division and that it's not just about family support and literacy, but it really carries over into health and it carries over into early learning, and making sure that parents understand that it's not just about their child's own literacy development, but their role in supporting that development as well. So.
Aaliyah, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What percentage of the population that you identified that is at risk or in need of, these kinds of support services are you able to reach through First Things First?
That's a great question. And how our services are under the division specifically of family support and literacy, we have a continuum of services. We go from very universal, for example, our parent kits that reach every person who's had a child, that they're provided a parent kit in the hospital, to very intensive and specific targeted support, which is home visitation, the parenting classes. And it really varies by community, but if I couldn't give you a percentage because each community is so different.
Just a guess. Scratching the surface, getting heavily into it.
At this point, we've definitely scratched the surface and we're taking a much deeper dive. I have to say, right now we're still at the surface level because all of our contracts are already out for this state fiscal year. But as we move into state fiscal year 15 and 16 planning, that's where we'll be taking the continuum of effective practices and actually embedding it into the contract. So last year and this year, really our primary goal is to start making providers aware of what the changes are, how we're embedding it, what they can do to begin preparing themselves, and then full rollout will start for state fiscal year 16. So we're taking it in chunks. Because it's been interesting. There's a lot of practitioners who are still under the older regime of it being daycare or not understanding really how to maximize that. So as we increase that bar and really start to educate and inform, we're taking it in mild pieces so that we really have a willingness, and I can say we haven't had any pushback yet. There really is a strong interest on the alignment, particularly because of Common Core and Move On When Reading, which Kathy will talk about.
Thank you. Kathy?
I'd just like to add, as someone who did supervise and coordinate a family literacy program in Northwest Maricopa, the amazing thing is we had a significant number of under-resourced families that were able to attend our program, and we even had some people in Wickenburg who came by taxi to be there. But I will also tell you that we also had some very interesting research scientists who had the same need. As one mother put it very eloquently, I have a PhD in electrical engineering and I know nothing about early childhood literacy. And so the programs that we were able to provide to those families caught both ends of the spectrum so very effectively.
Great to hear. It's a good example.
And just before I pass it over, one of the guiding tools is our Family Support and Literacy Framework. We are very fortunate to have an advisory committee of about 20 stakeholders, all from different organizations and different, some state agencies, some private agencies, really working collaboratively around specifically literacy and family support, and how do we make sure that early literacy is so immersed into all of our programming that it's not this standalone appendage just kind of out here, oh yeah, and literacy is important too. And with that process, as we finish up our framework and it goes to the state board in December, really utilizing all of our key stakeholders as a vein to get this information out, and there being a consistent message across our stakeholders on the importance of early literacy, and being very systematic on how we're doing that. So it's been great to see the interest and just the willingness across agencies to get this done, and not just get it done, but get it done very well to make sure that we're doing our job.
So I will go to the exact opposite end of the spectrum for just a minute. The Arizona Department of Education, as you know, is responsible for providing support to schools and educators for grades kindergarten through grade 12. And that support rests, the foundation for that support, I guess I should say, are our K12 Academic Standards. So those are standards that outline what students need to know and be able to do in all the content areas articulated by grade level, kindergarten through grade 12. So that would be literacy, which is reading, writing, speaking, listening, mathematics, social studies, science, all of those content areas K12. That's the responsibility of the Department of Education. And that said, I know that you are probably most likely very aware of all of the deep emotional conversations going around our communities these days about education. And partly that is because our communities and our society has changed so drastically in this age of technology that the mandate for K-12 education has completely shifted, and I cannot emphasize enough how significant that change is. And that change for the 21st century is that the K-12 system must graduate all students. Not best case scenario, we'll try our best, let's stare at the data, hope it gets better. Not anymore. In the 21st century, the K-12 system must graduate every student so that options for ongoing post-secondary education or workforce training is real and viable for every student. That's huge for us because we're at this point trying, as many of you are aware, trying to revise a system that's basically 100 years old, and it was never designed to graduate every student. So that mandate, which is coming into our education system from our communities, from our the business community who says, look, we're struggling to hire the folks that you're graduating out of your system right now. That said, if we hire students out of your system, know that they are moving into a work environment that will expect them to be on a learning curve most of their working days. So when I say post-secondary options, which could be post-secondary learning or workforce training, even the business world is telling us that you need to graduate people who know how to keep themselves on a learning curve, know how to learn, because even the work environment is changing so drastically that they're going to be in some kind of training mode most of their, as I said, most of their work days. So that is that's a mandate that is resonating very deeply in the K-12 environment these days. That is creating a domino effect right down through our system. because if everyone has to graduate, that's not just the 12th grade teacher's problem. That isn't just a high school's issue. It's not just a middle school, it's everyone's issue. Because when we start a child in kindergarten, we have to make sure they're on a trajectory of learning that's going to guarantee that graduation. And when they're not, what are we going to do about it as soon as that information becomes evident to us that they're not on grade track? So lots of changes. That said, in this 21st century, the most important skill that students need to master is going to be communication skills. And by that I mean speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Because in this knowledge age, it's not about memorizing individual facts. It's about accessing all kinds of information and working at a much higher level of understanding. So now we're talking about synthesizing, analyzing, evaluating information. How do you bring that all together and begin to process that and determine what is it I know and understand? What information is valid and reliable and what isn't? So we're now asking all students to begin to think far more deeply. And their communication skills are going to have to be more about this synthesizing and this evaluating, and then this communicating back out what I now know and understand. And some of that communication is going to have to be on an innovative level. Like after I've gathered all this information, analyzed, synthesized, here's what I'm thinking, and how would I push my own thinking forward? Because that's the kind of thinking that's going to be required in the workforce for the most part. So communication skills now become critical, right from kindergarten through grade 12. It no longer is, the main question in our classrooms is no longer what is the right answer, which just required learners to regurgitate back what they heard. It's no longer what is the right answer. The question in our classrooms is why. Why do you believe that makes sense? Why did you begin to solve that problem that way? Why? Why do you think that? That's the critical question, kindergarten through grade 12. So that said, and this really intense focus on building these higher level communication skills, as I said, resonates from grade 12 right down through. In third grade in Arizona, we now have a high stakes literacy assessment, and that's attached to our Move On When Reading legislation. So beginning this school year, students that receive a falls far below category, so we have 4 categories for Ames right now, exceeds and meets, those are the 2 categories that indicate a student has passed or met the expectations for our state assessment. And then we have approaches and falls far below. Those 2 categories indicate that the student did not master the necessary skills. And just a bit of a reminder about Ames. Ames was always designed to be an assessment that indicated basic mastery. So no one is going to Harvard because of the Ames score. It really is, it was designed to just indicate basic mastery. And the reason I want to share that with you is how profound the information is when a young child tells us in 3rd grade, I cannot do this. I cannot answer this question, when the questions are designed to indicate basic mastery. So that said, pretty, well, let's say, on average, for the last number of years, about 25% of our 3rd graders do not pass Ames reading. It's 25%, which is about 23 or 24,000 students do not pass. Of those students, about 20,000 are in the approaches category. They are not going to be impacted by the Move On When Reading legislation. But note, they didn't pass, but they will be going on to 4th grade. without the necessary reading skills. The students that will be retained or need to be considered for retention are in the falls far below category, and it's approximately 3,000 to 4,000 students. There are 2 good cause exemptions, students still receiving English language services as English language learners if they've received less than 2 years of language instruction, or students that already are receiving special ed services through an IEP. So we'd be looking at probably about 12 to 1,500 students that will be retained. That is still a very significant number, certainly for those 1,200 to 1,500 students. But as a community, our responsibility for ensuring that all of our students are reading proficiently at the end of 3rd grade is really for all of our K3 students, that we want to make sure that they're leaving 3rd grade very proficient with the literacy skills required of them. So, that said, going backwards, I cannot emphasize enough not only the importance, but the impact just this year in the partnership. The Arizona Department of Education is a member of with Read On Arizona. It's absolutely critical for our work. It used to be that reading was the purview of the school system, and it just somehow magically happened in school, hopefully for the most part. But everything that research and evidence has told us over the last 20 to 30 years tells us that the work that we are engaging in our school systems to ensure students are reading proficiently at the end of 3rd grade actually begins, as Terri said, shortly after birth. That to become a proficient reader in those 4 wraparound years, kindergarten through 3rd grade, early language development is absolutely essential. So the partnership has become very important to us because rather than the K12 system providing the siloed information for parents on, as your child comes in the kindergarten door, here's what you should be aware of, here's what you can do to help. What becomes really important is that we provide families and community members and educators anywhere along the continuum of the connected and aligned support that all of our children need as they begin to develop language, and how that begins to connect to listening and speaking skills that the children bring into our kindergarten program to learn to read. That all of those things are connected, and when they are, when students come with limited language, and certainly that includes English-speaking children who come with limited mastery of the English language, that it requires a lot of intervention back to language development before a teacher can begin reading. So this partnership is providing ADE an excellent opportunity to begin to connect this continuum and to connect the support that's coming out of the department to this continuum that both Terri and Aaliyah have been describing to you up to this point. One of the products that we have created together very recently is an early literacy guide that is specifically designed to provide information to parents and community members on the Move On When Reading legislation, what that is, and the decisions that educators and parents will be making beginning this spring for some students, to information on what sound literacy support looks like and sounds like, and how families can ensure that what they're doing is not only meaningful but effective. To also include important questions that families need to be asking teachers beginning in kindergarten and through those early formative elementary years. the questions they need to be asking to teachers and principals about the support that their child is receiving, about evidence that their child is generating on their own learning, and how the school sees additional support that parents and families can be providing. So this literacy guide, actually, while it's focused around K3, actually extends to additional support that parents can be providing in rich language development. So we're not asking all family members to become reading specialists, but what does it mean to engage your young child with language so that those skills can be brought into the classroom on a daily basis. And again, it's this connection that's become real powerful from early learning years into the elementary learning years, so that essentially we can all be working together to look at read-on's work as a prevention model for all students, even though we now have a high-stakes literacy assessment, but really our goal as community members and as supporters of effective learning environments, that we are all moving down the same road of sound effective practice as early on as necessary to ensure that we're making the best use of our time and resources right from the very beginning and not needing to repair and revise along the way. So the connection to that continuum and alignment is extraordinarily important.
No, but we wanted to leave time for questions.
Yes.
So we put a lot of information out at every